The lights of the stadium are blinding, a sharp contrast to the years of shadows she has inhabited. For the audience, this is a comeback, a triumphant return of the voice that defined a generation. But as she stands there, draped in a gown that feels more like armor than silk, there is a palpable shift in the air. This isn't the Adele we remember. The girl who sang of someone like you, with a heart-on-sleeve desperation, has been replaced by someone cooler, steadier, and infinitely more formidable. She has returned, but she has returned changed. We often think of albums as things made for the world, polished, produced, and packaged for millions of strangers to hear. We see the marketing campaigns, the billboards, and the global tours as evidence of a career. But sometimes, art isn't a performance. It is a desperate attempt to communicate with just one person. There is a terrifying intimacy in realizing that the most important conversation of your life is one you are not yet brave enough to have face-to-face. For Adele, the album 30 was not really for the fans, the critics, or the charts. It was a message in a bottle, cast into the turbulent waters of the future, intended for the one person who mattered most, her son, Angelo. It is a story about the devastating realization that to save yourself, you sometimes have to break the heart of the person you love more than life itself. The hollow ache of dismantling a world. You might know what it feels like to look at someone you adore, partner, a parent, or most poignantly, a child, and know that you are the source of their confusion. When we talk about divorce or the end of things, we usually talk about the adults. We analyze the arguments, the long periods of silence, and the slow, agonizing drift towards separate lives. We focus on the why of the romantic failure. But we rarely talk about the specific, hollow ache of being a parent who has to dismantle their childless world in the pursuit of their own happiness. It is a weight that feels heavier than any grief. Adele has been profoundly open about this specific guilt, describing the period of her divorce as the lowest point in her life. It wasn't just because a relationship ended. It was because a family changed shape. The geometry of her life, once a solid triangle of mother, father, and child, had collapsed. She realized that her son, even at a young age, could feel her absence even when she was sitting right next to him. He could sense that she wasn't truly there. Her soul was elsewhere, wandering through the wreckage of her marriage, trying to find a version of herself that didn't feel like a ghost. We spend so much of our lives trying to protect children from pain. We shield them from the sharp edges of our own mistakes and filter the world so they only see the light. But there comes a moment where protection turns into deception. Silence, intended to guard, becomes heavier than the truth. The child feels the tension in the air, the unsaid words hanging like smoke, and they begin to internalize the instability. Adele realized that by trying to stay for him, she was actually teaching him that a hollow, unhappy home was the standard for love. The Saturn Return, falling apart to grow up. This is where her story connects to the universal fear of losing a future we promised to someone else. In our earlier stories, we talked about the pain of losing a planned life and the disorientation of losing oneself. Adele experienced this on a global scale. She retreated, she went quiet, and she stepped away from the spotlight that demanded her to be the voice of heartbreak for everyone else. In that silence, she confronted her Saturn Return, that astrological coming of age that occurs in your late 20s. It is a period that demands you either grow up or fall apart. For Adele, it was both. She realized she was just going through the motions, floating through a life that looked successful on the outside, but felt spiritually bankrupt on the inside. The person who noticed this most wasn't the press or the public, it was Angelo. Children are intuitive. They read the energy in a room long before they understand the vocabulary of divorce. He began to ask questions that cut straight to the bone, innocent, devastating questions that she didn't have the answers for. Why don't you love my dad anymore? Why can't we still live together? Why are you different? Those questions are the heartbeat of the album. specifically in the haunting track, My Little Love. If you listen closely, you aren't hearing a pop star singing a soulful ballad. You are hearing a mother weeping in the dark of her bedroom. The bravery of being the villain Adele included real voice notes in her music snippets of intimate, heartbreaking conversations with her son, because she wanted the record to be a true document of that era. In one note, she admits to him, "I love your dad because he gave you to me. You're half me and you're half daddy." It is a profound act of vulnerability to let the world hear you when you are that fragile and exposed. She confesses to him, "Mummy's been having a lot of big feelings lately," trying to give him a language for the grief that was filling their home. We often think that being a strong parent means having it all together, never letting them see the cracks in the foundation. But Adele chose a different path. She chose to show him that adults are messy, that they get confused, and that they struggle to find their footing, just like children do. There is an immense, almost terrifying bravery in stepping down from the pedestal of parenthood and standing on the ground as a human being. She realized she couldn't heal if she kept pretending everything was fine. More importantly, she realized he couldn't heal if she lied to him about why their life was changing. This brings us to the most difficult part of her narrative, the idea of the voluntary choice. Adele said she wanted to explain to him who she was and why she voluntarily chose to dismantle his entire life in the pursuit of her own happiness. That phrase is where the true weight lies. This is not a story of victimhood or circumstances beyond her control. It is a story of terrifying accountability. Most of us would do anything to avoid being the villain in our children's lives. We stay in situations that drain us because we believe that endurance is the ultimate form of love. We convince ourselves that a broken home is a greater sin than a hollow one. Adele challenged that narrative. She worried that if she stayed, she would eventually resent the very person she was staying for. This is a deeply uncomfortable truth that many parents carry in secret. The fear that their sacrifice will eventually turn into bitterness, a poison that the child will eventually have to drink. Disappearing to survive. To navigate this, Adele had to disappear. Her hiatus wasn't just a career break. It was a survival strategy. She had to build a container strong enough to hold her grief, her anxiety, and her guilt. She spoke about the crushing hangxiety that would wake her up in the middle of the night, the physiological manifestation of a soul in crisis. She turned to therapy, to exercise, and to the silence of her own mind. She was fighting to become a version of herself that was worth knowing. She didn't want her son to grow up thinking that love means making yourself small to fit in a room. She wanted him to see a mother who respected herself enough to demand joy, even if it meant walking through fire to reach it. This is the essence of the unsettling return. When she finally stepped back into the light, she was no longer the relatable, one-of-us figure the public felt they owned. She was thinner, stronger, more guarded, and deeply self-possessed. To some, this change was uncomfortable. We like our celebrities and our mothers to remain recognizable, predictable, and sacrificial. When someone returns from a period of intense personal transformation, their new strength can feel like a confrontation. It reminds us of the parts of ourselves we haven't had the courage to change. Parenting from the past for the future. The album 30 serves as a map for her son, a guide to navigating the wreckage of human relationships without losing one's soul. It explores the painful reality that two good people can sometimes fail to make a good life together. It reframes the ending of a marriage not as a failure, but as a rescue mission for the spirit. By speaking so openly about her divorce and her own parents' absence, Adele is attempting to break a generational cycle. She is teaching her son that emotions are not things to be feared or hidden. She is teaching him that loneliness is a part of life and that sitting with it is better than running from it. In interviews, she mentioned that she made this album so that when he is in his 20s or 30s, perhaps navigating his own complex relationships, he might find comfort in her experiences. She is parenting him from the past, and parenting him for the future, all at once. She is creating a bridge across time, a conversation that can continue long after the initial pain of the divorce has faded. Isn't that what we all want? To be truly known by the people we love? To be seen not just for the roles we play, mom, dad, partner, but for the complicated human beings we are underneath? Adele showed us that the greatest gift you can give someone is your own authenticity, even if that authenticity comes with tears and difficult conversations. The redemption of the truth. The album 30 is not a tragedy. It is a redemption song. It is a testament to the fact that we can survive our own choices. It reminds us that while we cannot protect the ones we love from sadness, we can teach them how to survive it. We can show them that sadness is not the end of the world, but merely a season within it. Adele's journey reminds us that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot teach a child how to love themselves if you are constantly betraying your own heart. As she stands on that stage now, the crowd sees a superstar. But if you look into her eyes, the eyes we captured in that sketch, you see a woman who has done the hard work of looking at her own reflection and not blinking. She has come back changed. She is stronger, she is distant, and she is entirely her own. She has survived the dismantling of her world, and in doing so, she has built a new one based on truth rather than tradition. She taught us that you don't have to be perfect to be a good parent. You just have to be present and honest. And that maybe, just maybe, the truth is the only legacy worth leaving behind. A question for you: if you had to write a letter to the people you love, explaining the hardest choice you ever made, a choice that perhaps hurt them but saved you, would you be brave enough to tell them the whole truth? Or would you still try to protect them from your pain?